everyone. I am here with
Chris Ruff, CEO of Glympse.
I'm Sam, the marketing specialist, and we're going to be doing a quick interview regarding steel and how Glympse is involved in that industry.
Let's go.
Okay, let's get started. Jump right into it.
Perfect.
So, one of my first questions for you is why do public maps like Google, Apple, etc. fail on private industrial properties today?
The big answer to that is it's private. So maps have been developed over time using basically cars driving around and sensor data and things from the government. Well, all of that doesn't exist inside a closed facility because those cars don't have access to it. So really, these are unmapped areas of the world, but they represent a huge amount of surface area. And for the future of autonomous driving and other things like that, these areas need to get mapped.
What are the real operational consequences when drivers rely on verbal direction or even things like paper maps?
So the biggest issue is operational, but it's really around safety. And these contractors who are driving these trucks show up on site. Maybe they've been there before, maybe they haven't. And then they're told, go to lot B. And maybe they're handed a paper map, but paper maps are super distracting, right? You have to orient to them, know what's true north, what's not. So you're now driving around and you kind of know where you're going. And if you take the wrong turn, you may down in a dead end scenario where you can't even back your truck out. So now somebody from the facility has to go out, help them back up. You may drive the wrong way down a one-way street because stuff isn't always marked as well as it should be. And so by digitizing all of this, we can do a couple of things. One, we can make sure that the route is the route the driver should take. And secondly, the way Glympse does it, we're able to actually localize all of our mapping and directions into the language of the driver. Today, only a small percentage of drivers are native English speakers. Most are coming from other cultures, other languages, Eastern Europe, Spanish speaking. And so to do this well, putting it in their language they're familiar with just increases the amount of safety for the overall facility.
Right. And I can only imagine how much time it might take away from everything that's going on at the mill in order to help these drivers get to where they need to go.
I mean, the mills are understaffed anyway. And so if they have to stop what they're doing and you have to take a loader who's supposed to be loading trucks and now maybe use that loader to pull a truck out of a ditch, right? To get it back up and running, or even taking time away to leave your post to go do it. All of those things then affect the overall operations of the mill. And so beyond safety, any mistake or a problem that occurs because of poor direction will be a waterfall effect around productivity the rest of the day.
So how does having visibility of trucks on site in real time allow loaders, scale staff, and operational teams to be more operationally efficient?
So historically, the whole system is blind. The trucks show up at the gate, they check in. They usually weigh in because then they weigh out when they leave to make sure the amount of steel that they picked up is the right amount of steel based on the weight that they took. So it's really blind even to the scale. But now once they get to the scale, everybody who's working loaders, and most of the facilities have fewer loaders than lots to load in. And that's just a capital issue, right? You want to keep your machines as optimized as possible with working all the time, right? And so you're sharing staff even in multiple places. So you don't really know what's coming. Having visibility will allow a loader to actually say, wow, I've got someone queued up, here I'm loading, and I've got an order that I have to fulfill, and he's in the next lot over. So he'll be here next. So now I'm not going to go over to the other lot. I'm going to wait to fulfill that one. And maybe it's like, now I'll go to the other lot. I have two in a row that I can see are on property at this point. So over time, we think we can influence human behavior to do the right thing. But even better, once we digitize all of this and we start learning from it, we can actually feed data back into their planning systems to see if we can't get trucks there to pick up in a better way.
Right.
So that you get more loads out of every loader for every lot, scheduled throughout the day, moving less equipment around and being significantly more efficient.
How does Glimpse's solution make it better for the driver's experience, cutting dwelling time, and allowing them to make money faster with less friction?
So one thing I learned when I got into this industry is the folks driving only make money when they're driving.
Interesting.
So while they're picking things up, technically they're not on the clock driving.
Really?
Yeah. So the longer they're waiting in a queue or waiting in a line to get through a gate, it's costing them money.
Yeah.
Right? Because they make money on mileage and time. So our system, and a lot of the mills we're working to first, they really want to differentiate them as the shipper of choice, they call it,
Right.
which means the best drivers want to pick up from them because they can get done the quickest and make the most money. And so digitizing all this means that we can create these maps, do a better job with routing, get people on and off the property both safely and more efficiently. And overall, this should impact dwell time and them waiting around not making money, hopefully leading to our customers compared to others being the shippers of choice.
How does providing instructions in a driver's native language prevent dangerous misunderstandings? I know we kind of touched on this a little earlier.
I was also very surprised when I learned in the industry that so few drivers are native English speakers.
Mm-hmm.
They're coming first, second generation folks to the United States. They're taking these jobs.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them are entrepreneurs owning their own trucks, but native speaking is not, English speaking is not their first language.
Right.
And so anytime you're trying to give directions to anyone, it just works better if it's in the language they understand.
Right.
And because we deliver these maps digitally to them through a link through the browser,
Mm-hmm.
we can then set the language either manually for them, they can set it themselves, or two, if they have their browser configured to Spanish or Polish or whatever language they choose, then all the text and all the information will be in their native language for better understanding.
That'll be really nice. Are you able to give me a bit more background on how Glympse was able to implement the different languages into their software?
Yeah, so we've been doing it for a lot of years. We have a customer where we're in 130 countries with them and in, I think, over 32 languages.
Wow.
And it was the same idea. In this case, the end users of the maps were their customers who are waiting like for an Uber type experience,
Right.
where they could see the technician showing up to do their appointment. And really what we've done is developed a content management system for managing both language and targeting it through the web experience. So pretty simple technology. There's some setup at first, and of course we have to localize the content for every customer.
Right.
But typically once the content is localized, it's modified very infrequently to deliver that value. Easy for us, harder, we're doing everything through the browser, no download of an app, none of that. That makes it a lot easier.
It's really nice.
Because people are already overwhelmed with the amount of apps they have.
Yep.
And language configuration inside of apps is much more difficult because each build has to be done. So we took the right technical approach, we've got the right solution, and our customers benefit greatly from it.
Yeah, it sounds like they would benefit greatly, especially in that type of industry where you have so many different people trying to pave their way. Entrepreneurs, like you said, it makes it a lot more convenient for them so they can get paid quicker. Why are mills with predictable, transparent yards or using Glympse become preferred shippers of choice?
It's all about time.
Yeah.
And safety, but in the respect to shipper of choice, it's about the driver knowing they're going to have a great experience when they come to the location. They'll get there, they'll get through the queue quicker, they'll get their loads loaded on their trucks quicker, and what's most important, they'll be back on the road making money.
Right.
Because while they're at the mill and they're waiting, time is money. If they waited at every mill throughout months of their work, they may lose 2 shipments a year in time, and that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
If you're feeding a family and you're trying to grow your business.
Yeah.
So all of these things matter, and we all know the 80-20 rule, that 20% of the best drivers do 80% of the work.
Yeah.
And it's beneficial to marry those drivers with the best mills in the world using Glympse software.
Makes sense. Also, I love the wording or the choice of words, shipper of choice. How did you land on that?
It came from our customers.
Really?
I cannot claim it. Yeah, they figured out that the cost to their business of good drivers versus, let's call them not as good drivers, was so significant that if they thought they could move the needle just a little bit towards them having more of the elite best drivers coming to their mill, they would save money. Especially those drivers tend to operate more safely. So the risks go down, right? Also of having them on property. So this is not just happening in the steel industry. We work a little bit in global transportation, supply chain, things like that. And the reality is that as things like Uber and Lyft and all these companies that you can now work for yourself, not have to travel on the open road, be home with your families every night and find a way to make money, it has cut into the people who are choosing trucking and transportation as their careers. And so we're dealing with a more limited pool. And so you need to be great at what you're doing as a mill to make sure you get the best drivers anyway, but it's across the board. And then you want the best of the best.
Yeah.
Because there may be some self-selecting people who don't drive for Uber want to go drive these other trucks, and that may not be the best in the best interest for the industry. So
Completely.
it's a big industry shift, a big global shift, because it's just fewer people are driving commercially anymore.
What does a typical Glimpse rollout look like from mapping to live operations?
Yeah, there's really two work streams that have to happen to get the Glimpse solution up and running. The first is we have to map the location because, like I mentioned, the maps don't exist. And so we do that using a couple of techniques. One is we do rely on satellite data because you can see satellite imagery, roads, and things. And then secondly, we rely on our customer partners to use some of our mobile app technology to actually drive the routes for us, and we capture their live GPS data streams. In fact, we will tend to look at capturing from multiple carrier providers, meaning wireless carrier providers, because depending on where the cell towers are located, you will get slightly different reactions, like behavior. It's not far off, but it drifts just a little bit. And so we want to make sure, regardless of the driver's phone carrier, that we've got the route mapped correctly for them.
Right. You don't want it to be a barrier.
So that's the first thing that has to be done, or the whole system doesn't work. The second part is there's usually a minimal amount of integration. And those integration points can be through transportation systems that our customers have where they're scheduling orders with the drivers. It may be through a gate check-in system because they have the appointments for gate check-in there. It's really about getting Glimpse the driver information, the driver's phone number, and the location of the loads that they're picking up.
Right.
And that's the minimal that we need to sort of drive the experience. That allows us to send a notification to the driver and also route them to the stops, whether one or many, across the mill, and then we can route them back out. And usually there's a stop in the middle at a staging area because the drivers usually tarp and secure their loads right before going to the gate scale to check out.
How do ports, mining, data centers, construction, and utilities use the same visibility framework?
So anywhere that's, a colleague of mine calls them messy yards. And the idea of the messy yard is they're unstructured roads, basically, right? And these yards, whether it's a steel mill or if you've ever seen a port, ports roads are really defined by shipping containers stacked up. That's all they are. Genuinely, that's all they are. And the roads are the aisles or alleys in between the shipping containers.
Pretty much.
And some of them stay that way forever, and maybe some of them change over time.
Right.
But again, you want to get the truck to the right place to pick up the load.
Right.
And you want to do it safely and all of those things. So that's another opportunity for us. Rail yards are similar, especially if there's multiple loading docks within a rail situation. We're looking at oil and gas, both on the mining side, but even more importantly, the refining side.
Right.
Because you go to a refinery, it's dangerous, just like a steel mill. And the drivers need to stay where the drivers need to stay. And again, they're unstructured roads, meaning you can't route to them. So, this is kind of the beginning for us with respect to mapping the unmapped. But it's going to be significant in the way that these maps become really important to the future of transportation in a way that I don't think people are thinking about correctly today.
Definitely. I think from everything that you've told me and just thinking back on like this entire conversation, people are not necessarily considering, because it seems like a lot of, let's say ports, for example, haven't had their eyes open to opportunities that would make their lives a little bit more efficient.
Yeah, and it's like I've been in business a very long time, and we tend to solve the gigantic problem and let the small things kind of linger.
Right.
The challenge is that those small things start to add up.
I was about to say.
And eventually something you think is small is really impactful to your bottom line.
Right.
So getting ahead of this, because it's really simple, straightforward, low cost per pickup. So there's really not an economic reason not to do it. The ROI more than pays off. It's really just on my list of things I need to get done this next year.
Right.
Picking this as one of the problems to solve. And that falls to Glympse to help define that problem and help them understand the importance of doing it and why making this investment in a private map and private routing and all these things will make them more competitive long term.
Right. And it doesn't even feel like them getting ahead of the times. It almost feels like them keeping up with the times.
And the reality is they're going to be behind the times very soon.
Right.
So the world is changing really, really rapidly. And within a decade, maybe sooner, autonomous driving is going to be here and super impactful. And I'm not talking about robot trucks. There'll probably be drivers still in the trucks to begin with. But eventually I am talking about robot trucks.
Things like Waymo.
Completely autonomous. And The way the autonomous cars like Waymo work today
Mhm.
is they actually rely on Google's Maps.
Interesting.
So they use sensors too. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
The sensors cause them not to hit things.
But it's almost like a baseline for
But
them.
the baseline is the map.
Right.
So the car gets told where to go using routing from Google. Well, think about that a minute. These trucks maybe are using a technology like Waymo or Tesla, or there'll be lots of autonomous technologies
Right.
to navigate to the gate,
Mhm.
get on the scale, and after that, if there are no maps,
Where are they supposed to go?
who's going to drive those trucks?
Right.
Because the truck can't rely on sensors alone at that point. It has to route in roads that it can drive on.
Right.
And it doesn't know unless it's told.
Yeah.
And so making an investment today in developing your map as a platform is the first step for being sort of future proof to meet the needs of autonomy. Because autonomy is the future long term, and it's going to be safer when it happens.
Mhm.
Those maps have got to be in place.
Yeah.
And you've got to get ahead of it. And why not take the benefit of being the shipper of choice until then and making your facility safer?
Completely. It doesn't matter if you are working with drivers now or autonomy later. You're going to need maps either
You're
way.
going to need maps either way.
So
make the investment today.
do you have anything that you're excited for or looking forward to when it comes to Glympse moving into the steel industry?
Well, I'm really excited because it's kind of a very open world, right? Most of the technology that has been developed to date for a steel mill has focused on production. And rightly so. That's how they make their money. And making steel is hot and dangerous. And and I've gotten the privilege of visiting 3 steel mills in my life and seeing it all work. And it's a super cool process and makes me think, how did they do this 200 years ago? But
Right.
it's super cool. But that's where all the tech has been. The next level of tech has been the core sort of transportation. And that's pretty common logistics software, and it's probably the same software stacks at least that are being used by Walmart, by other people to help schedule deliveries and all those things. But where we're in now is sort of the next phase, and that's technology that is human facing, especially human facing while humans are visiting the mill.
Right.
So today we're doing pickup of steel. People are dropping off scrap because of this. A lot of the steel manufactured in the United States comes from the scrap we throw away in our houses. You can see big piles of scrap. But long term, any visitor or contractor who comes to the site, these private maps and tracking and management, and you can create geofences, which are polygons that sit around areas that are restricted, so we can stop people from going into restricted areas. And if they do, we could send them a text message or send them a notification. So we can really start to build off this private map concept to really digitize and automate all visitors who come to the mill, making for a much better experience and much safer.
So I know we've talked a lot about how it's going to help the drivers and a little bit about how it's going to help the mills on the back end. Are we offering any sort of like softwares within this implementation that are going to like really help track everything that's going on the back end?
So there's a couple of things. One is obviously we have a data reporting we provide all of our customers. It showcases time on site and all of these different metrics. We also provide a live dashboard. You could put that dashboard up in your lunchroom on a wall on a big screen, and you could see who's all there.
Yeah.
And then we also provide an interface that can be used inside the loader. So the loader can actually see on a map or in a queue what loads are coming to them next.
That's really nice.
After they've entered the gate. So all of those pieces of technology will get smarter and better. And like I said before, I think the big thing is that we'll take the data over time that we're learning from these mills and begin to understand queuing and scheduling that they can then feed back into their planning systems, right? Because the planning systems today that schedule pickups, they end at the gate.
Right.
And they don't start again until they leave the gate. Right. So us filling in the gaps of, that product at this lot or this yard takes twice as long as we thought to load for whatever reason, right? And so we can't have a whole bunch of those here at the same time, or we're going to back up right there, right? And that's a simple thing to think about. In the future, we also can tie the products and the pickup to basically make sure the right products and things were picked up as well. So the person didn't take the wrong thing. So we think we can build a whole bunch of technology that's really useful for the mills to improve their operations and make the whole experience better.
That's really cool. I'm very, very excited to see where Glimpse is going to take this. I know you talked about the dashboards and the data. Are you able to go into the specifics of that at all, of like what that might look like to
Well, I mean, most of the data today is data that is really specific to a single mill. It may be specific to a single product category or types of products that mill
so it can be a wide
manufacturers.
range of things.
So yeah, the one thing that was interesting that I've learned in this process is no two mills are identical in both their size and the amount of product they develop.
Interesting.
Like some mills just make rebar for manufacturing and cement. That's all they do, right? And they have a use case and their data is different and the way they pick up is different. Right? Some make steel beams that go into manufacturing buildings or building railroads, right? So all of these products are different. And so we're going to have different data and metrics that are coming off of each one because also the mills are configured differently. Some have yards, some have places you pick up or you back your truck up and they load it for you. So we're going to start to build all of this data. But over time, what we can do, when we have a handful of mills, the data is very mill specific. When you have hundreds of mills or even hundreds of drivers using your experience across different use cases, ports, rail, steel, then we can start taking that data, anonymizing it so it's protected and no one, our customers don't give their data away, but anonymized data. And then we can start to build some models off it too to fuel AI and other things to where our customers can see best practices from the industry at large with drivers. They might be able to see how they score in time on site against other facilities, either like them or not like them. And so over time, we think this data will be super useful in making the industry smarter and the industry safer.